As you know, for those of you who've attended the Steamboat Institute's Freedom Conference in past years, we like to end each year with a speaker that we know is, I mean, they're all inspiring in their own way, but rather than talk about specific policy and politics and those things, sometimes we need to look at the bigger picture and talk about service and sacrifice and look at things from a broader perspective. And our closing speaker today is certainly going to present that perspective. Rob Smith is a decorated Iraq War veteran. He served for 5 years in the United States Army, including 2 tours in the Middle East. During Operation Iraqi Freedom, he was awarded the Army Commendation Medal and the Combat Infantry Badge. He came out as conservative in a 2018 profile in the Daily Mail and shortly after on the hit Fox News show Water's World. As a political commentator, he's been on Fox News, NBC News, CNN, and many others. He has spoken about politics and current events at Yale, Google, Dutch Bank, Vanderbilt University, and dozens of other colleges, universities, and companies across America. During the riots that happened in Minneapolis back in June, I noticed that while others were merely tweeting and bloviating, Rob was boots on the ground helping a local church distribute food and supplies. He holds a master's degree from Columbia University. His memoir, Always a Soldier, Service, Sacrifice, and Becoming America's Favorite Black Gay Republican, was released in July, and I strongly encourage you to get a copy. You can follow Rob on Twitter, of course, and on Facebook and Instagram. It is a great pleasure to introduce to you Iraq War veteran Rob Smith.
My name is Rob Smith. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, conservative. For me, I got so sick of the lies, specifically what they were telling black people. And I got sick of that message of victimhood that they continue to push to black Americans over and over and over again for the last 3 decades of my life. The idea is, why can't I have different ideas? Why can't I be free thinking? Why can't I have a victor mentality? Why do I think Democrats use identity politics to keep people in line, to keep black people in line, to keep Latinos in line, to keep gay people in line?
Giving up the leftist policies and coming over to the right tells me that I have a choice.
And I think that socialism is a loser idea. It's a loser idea for losers.
You know, the politicians have failed them. The people know that it is time for a change.
And I think it's a very exciting time to be a black conservative. I'm not the type of guy that wallows around in victimhood. Even those who advocate for socialism continue to reap the benefits of the greatest economy this generation has seen. All right, it's always good to have a little intro video, you know. There were some students at Turning Point USA that created that video for me for an event that never happened, so we hope to make that event happen. So look, that's the only visual aid that I have to show you today. I don't have a PowerPoint, I don't have anything like that, because you don't need me to show you a PowerPoint to know that we are in a battle for the soul of this country right now. We know this. We see this. We have seen the videos all over Twitter. We've seen the videos all over social media. We've seen the videos all over our conservative news sources, because God knows CNN will have a reporter standing in front of a burning building telling you that this is mostly peaceful protest, right? So we realize that we are in a battle for the soul of this country. And this battle that we're in right now is law and order versus chaos. It is people who love this country versus people who hate it. It is people that believe that as Americans, we are fundamentally good people and we have a fundamentally good country, even though we realize that it is an imperfect country that has had some imperfect times in its history. And there are people who realize that we are fundamentally good as Americans. And then there are people that think that this is an awful place that was built on white supremacy and homophobia and sexism and whatever other buzzword terms that they use, these leftist ideas, these leftist buzzword terms. And so I'm going to talk about what it means to go from leftist to liberated, because I was a leftist, right? Now, it is very easy to get sucked up into leftism. I'm pretty sure a lot of your children and grandchildren are doing it right now on their college campuses. You're basically paying for them to be indoctrinated into leftism, which is something that we're all trying to fight right now. But liberation, I feel, is only going to come to Americans of all colors. It doesn't matter, black, white, Latino, gay, straight, whatever, it doesn't matter. Liberation is going to come to all Americans when we find a way to share this idea of the American identity, to share this idea of American exceptionalism with different groups of people. And I think that it can truly only start when you discover a love for country, when you discover a love for America. And I will tell you how I personally discovered my love for America. It was through military service. As you heard, I served for 5 years in the U.S. Army. I did a couple of tours overseas. And before I even get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about who I was before that. I wish that I could sit here and say that I joined the Army at 17 years old because I loved America so much that I wanted to serve. My mind wasn't thinking like that at 17 years old. I was born lower middle class and black in West Akron, Ohio. I don't know if anybody knows about Akron, Ohio, but it is rough. It is not fun. I went to failing schools. I was raised in a single parent household. Basically, everything that could have made me a statistic, that was how I was raised. And I decided to join the military at 17 years old because I knew that I needed to get out of that, because I knew that there had to be some path forward for my life. And for me, that path included military service. So I decided to sign up for the military at 17 years old. And at 17 years old, I found myself standing in U.S. Army infantry basic training. Only black kid in the platoon, only black kid, doesn't matter. And I remember, this is one of my most fundamental memories from that very first day. I'm sitting there, and you're supposed to stand up at attention. And I think I must have slouched a little bit. And my drill sergeant came through. He just ran through groups of people, and he's screaming in my face. And I'm like, oh, my God, what did I get into? What is this? This was not like the commercials that they played for me. This is not like the commercials they played for me right when I went into the recruiting station. I was also heavy. I was a heavy kid when I was younger. I was 17 years old. I was fat, okay? I was fat. It is what it is. I was fat. It's okay. Although I don't do body positivity, that's another leftist thing. So I was fat. And when I talk about my military service, I'm going to tell you two stories about this is how I knew that Americans were fundamentally good, right? And I'm going to kind of like flip back and forth in between time, and I'm going to show you the experience that I had that made me know that Americans are fundamentally good. So one of those drill sergeants was scary. His name was Drill Sergeant August. This guy terrified me. He was a big, burly guy, bald head. He just scared the crap out of me. And obviously, since I was fat at the time, surprise, surprise, being a U.S. Army infantryman requires a certain amount of physical fitness, which I did not have. So I failed over and over again through the runs, failed over and over again through the marches and all of this other stuff. And it actually got so bad that I almost left, that I was almost on the verge of getting kicked out. And one time my drill sergeant sat down, white Southern guy, the typical quote unquote, he was a deplorable before anybody knew what a deplorable was, right? And he sits me down and looks me in the eye and he says, "Smith, do you want to be here?" And I said, "Drill Sergeant, I don't know. It feels like I'm failing at this. It feels like I can never do anything. It feels like I can't make it." And he says, "You can make it if you believe you can make it. So I'm going to give you one more try. You got to get out here and do this. Because I know," and I told him myself, I said, "I don't have anything to go back to. There is nothing to go back to in Akron, Ohio." And even at 17 years old, which was, more than a couple of years ago, I knew that there was nothing to go back to. And I was able to make it through infantry basic training. I was able to do that. So a couple of years ago, when I decided to come out as conservative, it was because I knew that all of the stuff that I was hearing about these evil, scary, crazy Republican Trump supporters was a lie. Because when I was in the military, and this was, fat 17-year-old black kid, white, quote unquote, redneck deplorable drill sergeant, he helped me out. Because when I was in the military, it wasn't about any of that other stuff that the left uses to divide us. He was there to create a strong soldier. He was there to create a strong infantryman. And that's what he did. And it didn't matter the color of my skin. It didn't matter any of that other stuff. Now, the second way that I learned to love America through military service was my deployment to Iraq. And the fundamental difference for me as a black man, when I deployed to Iraq with all of my other infantrymen, doesn't matter what color they were, white, black, whatever, we all wore the uniform of America. And so when we were overseas and we were doing we were doing tours, we were doing things to keep the peace, we were defending each other from insurgents, I saw combat, all of that other stuff. It was the first time in my life where you're not seen as black, you're not seen as white, or you're not seen as whatever, you're seen as American. And so we all came together in that way. And so I was able to survive being in Iraq and survive combat, and I write about all that stuff in the book in pretty graphic detail, what it means to be in combat and what it means to survive combat. But here's the trick. I went from being a United States Army infantry soldier to getting out and going to Syracuse University. So I did undergrad, I did my service. It wasn't for me to make a career out of the military, so I got out. And that's how I became a leftist. And that is what is happening to all of your children right now. So when you get into these college campuses and you go to university, and Heather McDonald spoke a little bit to this last night, there are so many different things that teach kids to become victims. So they're not taught skills. They're not taught things that will help them in life. They are taught that they are a victim of evil, imperialist, white supremacist, awful, bad, horrible, no good, very bad America because of the color of their skin, because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender, because of whatever else. And then they're around these interest groups that basically turn these students into leftists. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when we see the Black Lives Matter mob basically terrorizing people in the streets right now, because that is what's going on, and we can say that. When you see what I call them the pink hair mafia, these Antifa kids, right? The pink hair mafia screaming, and they're just acting completely ridiculous. This is what they're learning to do on college campuses. So part of our work with Turning Point USA is going into these college campuses and giving conservative students a voice, because you want conservative students to have a voice on these campuses, and you want them to be inspired, and you want them to be motivated, because there are so many other organizations that are leftist. They are drowned out. Usually when it comes to Turning Point USA or the Young Americans for Liberty or any of these other smaller organizations that are supposed to enhance conservative values on college campuses for these kids, it is 3 compared to 25, 30 of these other organizations that are all about leftism and that are all about Marxism and that are all about basically hurling hatred. And what you see on these streets, what you see on the streets of America right now, what you see is these people being emboldened to not only hurl hatred, but what you're also seeing is a sense of political terrorism, political intimidation. Because what they want is for people to be so ashamed to either be a conservative or support the president or wear a MAGA hat or do any of these other things. They want them to be so afraid to do that they use the threat of physical violence to intimidate them. That is literally the definition of terrorism. That is, like, I fought terrorists overseas. That is what they did, right? So this is a threat of physical violence. Now, as we saw in those videos after the RNC the other night, I saw a lot of people that looked like a lot of people in this room being harassed, intimidated, accosted, attacked by people in the name of what I have no idea. But that is what's going on. And that is why I thought it was so important for me to come out as a conservative, to come out as a supporter of President Trump, to say that it doesn't matter what the color of my skin is. And it doesn't matter that I'm gay. And all this other stuff doesn't really matter, because what matters is that I found a love for my country. And that love is going to be colored differently for me than it is for a lot of the people in this room. And that's fine, because there's unity in that. And unity is what we're looking for right now. Unity is what we need as Americans. Unity is why I decided to come out as America's favorite black gay Republican, which is... And so you laugh, right? Because it's a joke, right? It's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be humorous. And the point is that in this day and age in 2020, none of this stuff matters. But the left right now gets their power by telling people that it matters. By telling people that look like me, or by telling people that are Latino or gay or age or whatever, that they are fundamentally victims in a country that is fundamentally racist and oppressive against them just because of these immutable characteristics. And I came out as a conservative to fight back against that. Now, there's a lot of talk about identity politics this and identity politics that. I'm of the opinion that all politics is identity politics, but I will tell you the difference between how the left uses identity politics and how I like to think I use identity politics. The left and Democrats like to use identity politics so that they can tell people that look like me or that are Asian or gay or black or whatever that they are fundamental victims, that there is nothing that they can do to succeed in the greatest country in the world that has more opportunity for anybody out there ever than anywhere else. They are telling them to see themselves as perpetual victims because of these immutable characteristics. And so when I say that I'm America's favorite black gay Republican, it is me trying to inspire people that look like me or that are gay or that are whatever to break free of these identity politics that put this victimhood complex in your mind, because those are shackles that take years to break off. I am a testament to that. And if you break those shackles earlier on enough, then we can get down to the business of redefining or even strengthening what it means to be American. The problem with all of these, the pink-haired mafia and the Black Lives Matter mob and all of these other people that are sitting around here trying to bring our country into absolute chaos, is because they were never taught that it is a privilege and a blessing to be born in America. They are never taught that they have so much more opportunity. It is so deeply cynical of the left and what they teach them, because they are taught that they are victims that can't do anything, that will never make any money and do anything, and they are being fed this by the most wealthy and successful and prominent black people you will ever see in your life. In what universe is LeBron James oppressed? I would kill to be that oppressed. I would kill to be that oppressed. LeBron James is worth like $150 million. He has staff. I want staff. You guys probably have staff. I don't have staff yet. And so they use this message, and I'm going to read just like a little bit from this. I call it the woke culture. And I just want to define this because I articulated it much better in this book than I can off the cuff. So basically, woke culture people obsess over any and every perceived racial slight, amplify it for clicks and media attention, and make entire careers out of making white people feel guilty for being white. There is a man that is very prominent today that makes $80,000 per month on the lecture circuit telling white people about how evil they are. And black conservatives are the grifters? I think they got it flipped, right? So there's an entire online ecosystem of these people, and they make a ton of money. Maybe they're writers at middling websites who await every viral tale of racism like vultures picking at a dead animal to throw the red meat out to their perpetually outraged and aggrieved base of millennial and Zoomer blacks. Maybe they're C-list television actors who become tireless activists for false idols like Colin Kaepernick to remain relevant on social media. There's a lot of false idols that have gotten the hearts and minds of our youth, of our younger people. LeBron James is not oppressed. Colin Kaepernick is not oppressed. These rich and famous Hollywood celebrities that sell your children ideas of victimhood and oppression are not oppressed, but they need these people to believe it. And so, when we have so many people that have so much more power and influence and wealth than me, and like I said, I would kill to be that oppressed, the question is, and the fundamental challenge that we have today as Americans, in 2020, not in 2010, not in 1990, as Americans right now, the fundamental challenge that we have is uniting different types of people through love of country. Because this country is not and has never been about what divides us. It has to be about what unites us. Because if it is not, we will not exist. We just won't make it. And I cannot think of a better or more amazing example of the country being united and somebody really getting the message and how to put that out, like the Republican National Convention of this week. And I'll tell you why. There is a reason that the left is so mad. There is a reason that they're angry. There is a reason that they're outraged. There is a reason that they accost people on the streets. There is a reason that they want to strike fear in the hearts of people for supporting the president or being conservative or being a Republican. And that is because they know how successful the imagery that came out of that Republican National Convention was. They know how powerful it was to see somebody like Madison Cawthorn, who's probably going to be the youngest congressman in history, and who's paralyzed from the waist down. If you guys don't know his story, it's so inspiring, really look it up. But when he stood up for the flag, that was a moment, right? And these people know moments. We know moments. The RNC knows moments. I know a lot of the people that are behind the scenes making these videos. They know how to do moments. And so when Madison Cawthorn, who's paralyzed from the waist down, who has every reason in the world to be angry and upset and wallow in self-pity, but chooses not to, and chooses to stand up for America when spoiled multimillionaire athletes decide that they won't, that is powerful imagery. This is why people are so upset. It is powerful imagery to see somebody like Kim Klacik, who's gone insanely viral over these past couple of weeks. Kim Klacik has been bubbling under for about 1.5 years now, and it's so gratifying to see the whole world know who she is, because she's fierce. Like, she's amazing. And she is a living example of what happens when people decide to look past these immutable characteristics and say, I'm going to be black, or I'm going to be paralyzed, I'm going to be whatever, and I'm going to love America no matter what. And she's going to go out here and try to save Baltimore. I went to Baltimore, I think it was about 1.5 years ago, and I did a video for Turning Point USA. And some of these things you have to see in order to believe. You really have to see the degradation of these neighborhoods. You really have to see the destruction of these communities. And Kim Klacik is doing something about it. You think the left doesn't know that? The left is terrified. They are absolutely terrified. That is why we're seeing these hordes of the pink-haired mafia and BLM protesters. That is why the left is sending out They're hordes of people to inflict political intimidation and terrorism on American people just for exercising their right to vote. And I will tell you something. People who look like me died so that I could have my right to vote. As a matter of fact, people who look like all of us died so that we could have our right to vote. And I will be damned if anybody is going to intimidate me or make me feel ashamed of making the choice to exercise my God-given right as an American. So we know what the problems are. We know about the pink-haired mafia, and we know about the BLM hordes, and we know about the destructiveness of how the left uses identity politics. So the question is always, how do we win America back? And not only how do we win America back, but how do we, as people that are Republicans or conservatives or right-leaning, whatever you want to call it, how do we get our message out there for a new generation? How do we empower younger people to stand up for their rights to believe whatever they want to believe? How do we try to attract different groups of people without falling into the leftist trap of identity politics or using words like diversity or any of that gobbledygook that doesn't really make any difference? Because, you know, the left believes in diversity. The way they believe in diversity is only skin deep. They would like lots of different people that look differently but think the exact same. So what I have learned and what I have figured out through being at this conference, and I'm so blessed and privileged to be here because, as we know, they were able to put this on in the midst of the pandemic. So they were able to put this on, and this is such an amazing way to start the process of winning America back. And I'll tell you a couple of ways. This is how we win America back. This is how the people in this room win America back. This is how I help win America back. This is how we win America back. First of all, and everybody in this room is doing this in some way, some capacity, is to support the people that are out there, as Patrice said earlier, taking the bullets. And I love that analogy that she gave earlier, because it's like, I mean, I wouldn't call myself Wonder Woman, but I will just say I'm Black Panther. I'll be Black Panther. So if she's Wonder Woman, I'll be Black Panther, and I'll be out here and I'll be taking the bullets so that people can come up behind us. And I'm just not taking bullets for Black people or bullets for gay people or bullets for whatever. I'm taking bullets, and we're all taking bullets, and Patrice is taking bullets, and Amber's taking bullets, and everybody's taking the bullets for people that love America and stand up for this country no matter what, and stand up for this country against the radical left, because they want nothing more than to make hatred of this country normal. They want to normalize it. They want to normalize hatred of this country. As I was watching Jorge do his presentation yesterday, I was struck at some of the similarities between what was promised and in some ways given to the people of Venezuela and what is happening on the left right now in terms of what they are promising. Free college, free healthcare, free this for illegal immigrants, free that, free that. And look, I was having the conversation about free college, right? And I was talking with, I believe it was Jillian and her husband. And what was funny to me is that I actually started at community college. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. I will always be proud of it. Started at community college, then I went to Syracuse, then I did my grad at Columbia, and then I did all that. But why is it that the people on the left that are pushing this idea of free 4-year college for all are not telling people that they can go to community college? It is basically free. If you live, it is basically, it is like $60 a credit. All right? Like, look, I worked at KFC when I was 19 years old, and I could even afford, you can even afford $60 a credit on a KFC salary. So don't give me that. And I know what that salary is. I fried the chicken. It's very good before it gets in the heater for too long. That's neither here nor there. But, so the conversation is never about what is already there. It is about what we can promise to give to you for free if only you vote for us. If only you put us into power. Because then those evil capitalists that have created and built their wealth on their own, well, we're going to make them pay their fair share. Because it's not fair that they have so much and you have so little. And you know what I have to tell them is that there is more opportunity for anybody in this country, more so than there is in anywhere else on this planet, if you work for it, if you want it. If you take responsibility for your own life, because you cannot outsource your existence to the government. You can't outsource your thinking to, oh, okay, just like caught me up. You can't outsource your existence to the government. You can't outsource your thought to social media personalities. You have to do this for yourself. Now, there was a video that kind of went viral that I did about a year and a half ago. I was debating black liberals. It was a black liberals versus black conservatives debate on Vice News. And one of the things that I said was, I talk about my military service a lot. And I talk about how it helped me to love America, and I think that more people would be into loving America if we had more people that served, because as of right now, there is, I think less than 3% of the American population either has served or even knows somebody who has served. And by the way, do we have any veterans in the room? Because please raise your hand or stand up if you can. I would love to recognize you. And I would think about how much more unity we would have as a country, how much more love we would have for our fellow citizens and one another and our great country if more people served, if more people knew people who served, if more people were willing to recognize the sacrifice and service of these great men and women that stood up. And that is how we fight back. That is how we support American values. This is the direction that we have to move towards. And we have to. Because let me tell you something. What is going on right now in the streets of our country, it is a lot of people that don't know what love for country is. They don't know what service is. They don't know what sacrifice is. They don't know what personal responsibility is. And to get back to the point about the Vice video, there are a lot of people, I get a lot of flack because people are like, well, why, everybody shouldn't serve. Why should I have to do that, to do whatever? And I'm just like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to give something back? Why wouldn't you want to give something back to this country that gives us all so much? Like I said earlier, we are in a battle for the soul of this country. We're in a battle to try to preserve American values. We are in a battle to try to redefine and expand what loving America and being an American means to a generation that has been through a lot of strife, that has been through wars and depressions and scamdemics and all of this other stuff. But I don't say this to have a grim diagnosis about where we're going as Americans, because let me tell you something. What I see in this room, and what I see when I talk to people all across the country, and what I saw at the Republican National Convention this past week was something that the left used to think that they had the market cornered on, and that is hope. Because while we are optimistic about the future, while we know that we can make America great again, there are so many people that have such big voices on the left that are telling people that you can't do it, you can't make it, we can never do this, be afraid of your neighbor, be afraid of this, be afraid of that, and vote us into power so that we can make everything free and destroy the country. But that's the quiet part. They don't say that part out loud. So what we have to do right now, as we are in this battle for the soul of our country, is to stand up for what you believe in, to stand up for this great country, to fight back in every way you can against the radical left. For me, it's fighting back by standing up and embracing all of these identities and throwing them in your face and saying that you don't get to use me and define me by that. You don't get to control my thought because of these immutable characteristics. And support the people who are doing both for American values, who are trying to stand up for this great country. We are in a battle for the soul of our country. And everybody is armed. We all have the tools. And all I ask for you today, as you leave this conference, and you go out into your lives in the real world, and you go out and you use whatever influence you have, is to use them. Because this country that we all love depends on it. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite to the stage to do a little Q&A with Rob, a member of our Steamboat Institute Emerging Leaders Advisory Council, Juliet Lucas. It was her idea to use this great question system on a website so that people in all three rooms could participate. So she should get to do the last Q&A.
Thank you.
And I just want everybody to know, I had a little scooter accident. I took a spill on my scooter last week, so I'm not supposed to be putting a whole lot of pressure on that. So that's why I'm sitting down. But I stood up for you guys just like I stand for America.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So thank you for coming out here and speaking to us. I found your speech very inspiring. We
Thank
have
you.
a lot of great questions. And if anyone has any questions that they think of, please submit them because we would love to hear them. So first off, do you see any significant movement towards Trump? Do you see any significant towards Trump in the black community?
Yes, I do, and I'll tell you why. This is not based on, I always have to make sure that, we live in a bubble, right? There can be a bubble when you're a right-leaning media personality where you're on Fox News or you're doing, conservative media stuff, and we can kind of live in this bubble. So I always make sure that I'm not living in the bubble. So I'm thinking, what am I seeing on the streets? What am I seeing in the polls? And you see poll after poll after poll that has higher support for President Trump from African Americans, and it's specifically from African American males. And now the left realizes this. If you know anything about the black liberals, there's a masculinity crisis over there. And it's really crazy that a gay guy is saying that, but it's true. And the masculinity crisis that they're having is that they don't have very strong male leaders. And black men realize this because African American men are the most likely in the African American community to be entrepreneurs, to be business owners, to be people who benefit from a Republican presidency. And so all of this Trump is this, racist and homophobic and all of this stuff, this is noise that's created by that ecosystem that I write about in my book about the leftist African American oriented media. All of that stuff is noise, and the policies and the impact is really breaking through, and that's where it comes out in the polls.
Are you able to deliver your message to inner city minorities?
Yes, I wish I had more opportunities to, but yes, I am. And I'll tell you a story. So Jennifer brought up that I went to Minneapolis after the first riots happened in Minneapolis. And I did a GoFundMe, and we raised $125,000 that I'm going to deliver to $100,000 is going to one organization, and the rest of it is being distributed through a couple of churches that I think were distributing food, that was helping distribute food out to the homeless and all that. But I went there, and I remember having a conversation with this young black guy And he's about maybe 23, 24. He didn't know who I was. It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm an internet person, so it's whatever. And so we just kept on talking about the facts. And he was upset about George Floyd and upset about everything. And so the point that I kept trying to make to him was, why can't you? And we got to talking about entrepreneurship. We got to talking about ways to empower the African American community. And I think that the only way to ever empower any community, whether it's black, white, African American, or whoever, is through entrepreneurship and through financial. That is it to me. All of the other stuff is just noise. So I told him that I believe that entrepreneurship and believing in free markets and capitalism and all that stuff is something that will elevate the African American community. And he said, well, I want to do this, but I can't do that. And then I said, why? And then every time he gave me a reason, I rebutted that. Why? So at the end of this 45-minute conversation, that had been broken down. And multiply that man that I was talking to by 18 million or however many millions young black men that we have in this society, and that's the conversation that you have to get through. Because they're being told so often by so many people that they look up to and admire that they can't. And if you are told that you cannot, then if you're told you can't, then you won't. And I don't care who you are. So, yeah.
As a black gay man, how do you talk to liberal blacks and gays about systematic racism and the anti-gay Trump administration?
Oh, interesting. Well, I think that Rick Grinnell does a really good job at this, because this idea that the systematic racism thing is just like, it's neither here nor there. I'll get to that a little bit. But let's talk about this idea that this administration is so-called anti-gay, right? And so the idea that this administration is anti-gay is based purely on talking points. It's not based on any objective reality. So I'm going to give you some objective reality to this person that asked this question. President Trump is the first president, Republican or Democrat, in American history that has entered office as a supporter of marriage equality. President Trump appointed the highest ranking openly gay male ever to be in any administration, Republican or Democrat, in American history. Of course, that's Rick. President Trump secured millions of dollars to provide free PrEP treatment to gay men who are at high risk for HIV/AIDS. So these are objective facts. And not to get too deep into what I call the LGBTQ cult, a lot of stuff that you will hear from the left right now when they talk about gays and lesbians, they use the term LGBTQ. They are not talking about gays and lesbians, because I'm not an LGBTQ person, I'm a gay man. This is something created by the left, because they are using that to push what I call radical transgender ideology. And we don't have enough Q&A time to get into all that, but there is a chapter in the book about it. And so it is this idea that if they put everybody under this umbrella of LGBTQIA, alphabet soup, whatever, and they're really talking about quote unquote trans rights, and when you really get into what trans rights really are, they seem to be exclusively focused on eliminating sex segregated spaces for women and girls. So you have to like dig deep down into that. So that's why I say I'm not an LGBTQ person, I'm a gay man. And that means something different for me. I'm not LGBTQ, I don't identify with that.
That actually leads into our next question. Is it possible for us to separate supporting gay and lesbian rights from supporting sex change operations and transgenderism?
Yes, and I encourage you to, because these two things are not the same thing. You have been, when we talk about the media a lot, I think that a lot of people talk about news organizations, but when we talk about the media, we talk about organizations like GLAAD and organizations like HRC. And these people have been completely co-opted by millions, if not billions of dollars that are being given to them in order to push forth radical transgender ideology, which I feel is anti-gay and is very, very, very harmful to our youth, some of which may grow up to just be gays and lesbians. But they're being told that if you do not They're being told that if you're a guy that's kind of feminine, or if you're a girl that's a little butchy, then you're not just a gay guy or a lesbian potentially, you are in the wrong body, and you need to go and get your sex changed, and you need to be put on puberty blockers and all of this other stuff. Mark my words right now, everybody in this room, 10 years from now, when the mainstream media decides to wake up and do their jobs as journalists, what is going on with the transing of young children right now in America will be one of the biggest scandals that we will see in American history.
What do you think of the voice that Kanye West has in the Black community?
I think that there's a whole chapter in the book. It's called The Kanye Effect, Why Black Americans Are Leaving Democrats Behind. And I think one of the things that I said in the book is that there's an entire ecosystem in the mainstream media, but also entertainment, that is there to shame black people, prominent black people, when they express conservative ideas. So when Chance the Rapper says that black people don't have to be Democrats, he has to apologize for that. And this is a real thing. He apologized for saying that black people don't have to be Democrats. Now, the function of Kanye West is that he's a political and cultural icon that is so massive, he is uncancelable. He does not apologize. He doesn't have to apologize. Anything that this man says will be covered worldwide. He is, and I don't think that Candace would be, I don't think that Candace Owens would be mad at me for saying this, that he's a big part of the reason that she's become the worldwide phenomenon that she is. Because when Kanye says something, cancel culture can't come for that. You're talking about a cultural icon. So the space that he operates is, number one, he can reach so many more people than me or even Candace or any of the most prominent. He can reach 20, 30 times what we can. So if you have somebody like this that is bursting into tears at the thought of almost having aborted his oldest daughter, and this happened as well, you probably didn't see that because the media didn't want you to see him. The media didn't want you to see Kanye West bursting into tears at the thought of aborting his eldest daughter. They didn't want you to see that. They wanted you to see crazy Kanye. Because when Kanye first came out as a Trump supporter in late 2018, I was doing the cable news circuit. And I would be on panel after panel after panel of these black liberal pundits, talking heads. And you would just not be able to imagine the onslaught of everybody coming out in order to say that Kanye's crazy, he's bipolar, he's this or that, blah, blah, blah. These people tried to destroy this man. Now, when I came out as conservative, I lost all my gay friends in New York, and who cares? Whatever, I don't even live there anymore. And you know, some people say some mean things to me on Twitter or whatever. But I don't think that anybody would really comprehend what it is like to have the entire Hollywood and media establishment coalesce to try to destroy you. And that is what happened to Kanye West, and he's still there. And they want to make his presidential run, they want to make a joke out of it. And of course, obviously he has no chance of winning. That's not what it's about. He is unlocking the minds of young black Americans to conservative thoughts and conservative ideas. He said himself that if Trump wasn't in office, he's running as an independent because Trump was in office, but if Trump wasn't in office, he'd be running as a Republican. So the impact that he has culturally, it cannot be understated. It just can't. It's massive.
Talking about the election, do you have a prediction about the upcoming 2020 presidential election, where it might go and what the outcome might be?
Yeah, so funny thing about it is that even though I'm a supporter of the president and I've been to the White House and I met the president a couple of times, when I do my analysis and commentary, I try not to be too hacky. And when I say hacky, I mean that I'm on the Trump Pride Advisory Board. This is the LGBT sort of outreach advisory board, so I'm on that. But I have to make it clear that I'm not in any way compensated or paid by the RNC at all, or the Trump administration at all, right? So a couple of months ago, I was doing these hits and I was saying, it is possible that Biden could pull this off because he doesn't even have to come out of the basement. He's got the entire media running cover for him. And there are so many people that may be so tired of this world that we're living in where everybody is perpetually outraged by Trump's tweets, which is the world that the media has created. And I thought that these things would all coalesce and come together to make this race a little tighter. And then we had the summer of riots. And then we had the summer of burning buildings and communities being burned down and black lives being snuffed out by riots that were supposed to be in support of black lives. And America sees this, and they know exactly where it's coming from. So I always like to think of what are independents thinking. Everybody knows what I think politically, so what are independents thinking? And independents are thinking that if we elect Joe Biden, one or two things. Either if we elect Joe Biden into office, this will not change because this is a tiger that is hungrier and gets hungrier by the moment. You don't play footsie with these people, and you don't try to placate that tiger. Rand Paul found this out the hard way, all right? And to digress, Senator Rand Paul, has been one of the most vocal and prominent advocates for criminal justice reform in Washington, D.C. When we were trying to get the First Step Act passed, I was lobbying on Capitol Hill. We sat down with Senator Paul. He was open, honest, all of that stuff. He was for this. He co-authored a bill that was in the name of Breonna Taylor, right, to strike down no-knock warrants. The mob didn't know about this, and the mob didn't know about this, number one, because they don't read anything, and they don't know anything. And number two, even if the mob did know about this, they wouldn't care, because you don't play footsie with these people, right? You don't bow down to the mob. And as much as I respect Senator Paul, in a way, he had to learn the lesson the hard way, because he tried to meet the mob in the middle with the Breonna Taylor Act and with a lot of the work that he did, but now he realizes that it doesn't matter.
What do you say to liberal naysayers who call you a token black conservative? How do you fight that kind of name calling?
So the thing about it is that there's no way that I can possibly be a token because there are hundreds and thousands of us, if not millions of us. So how can I be a token? Because there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of us out there. And the thing about it is that there are a select few that are visible. Some are more visible than others. But how can I be a token anything when there's so many of us? Is Tim Scott a token? Is Kim Klacik a token? Is Vernon Jones a token? Is Daniel Cameron a token? Is Larry Elder a token? Was Herman Cain a token? Is Alan West a token? Is Carol Swain a token? Is Patrice a token? I mean, come on. So that's the response to that. Is Herschel Walker? By the way, Herschel Walker has a gay black Republican son that's all over social media and who is hysterical, by the way. He's that's the gay Candace Owens, so you guys look out for him. He goes in.
Was it a harder decision for you to come out as gay or for you to come out as conservative?
So I like to think that I coined the phrase coming out as conservative because it's and that's why I talk about it in the book. Like, there's a whole chapter about coming out as conservative. And so look, it was the decision. So there's two things here. The process, it was so much harder to come out as conservative than it was to come out as gay. Because when you think about it, compare the two. So this is why people are afraid or were afraid to come out as gay. You're afraid that your family's going to reject you. You're afraid you're going to lose all your friends. You're afraid that maybe you're going to lose your job and all that stuff. You know what happened when I came out as a conservative, let alone a Trump supporter? Lost all my friends. My career was in the toilet for a while because I was working in mainstream media. I was doing that. So all of the things that people are used to be afraid of when they came out as gay, they are afraid of now coming out as conservative, right? And so it was a harder transition for me. I had to completely rebuild my life, right? And I had to completely rebuild my life because I was foolish enough to think that I could have a different political opinion and that these friends of mine would still be my friends. But that was not the case. I was excommunicated from, I'm basically a political refugee in Florida right now. That is basically what happened to me. I'm dead serious, that is basically what happened. So the process towards coming as conservative was harder, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't change it for a second. Because number one, I found out who my friends really were. Number two, I found out what my voice really is. And number three, I've been able to use this voice to inspire people. Thanks. Because what people don't realize with people, with what I say front-facing people, right? So like me and Charlie and Candace and Hershelson and all these other people. So the front-facing people are out there to take the hits for people who have faceless avatars on Twitter because they could never be open about being conservative in their workplace because they would be railroaded out or they would lose all their friends. Or I have so many gay conservatives that write me emails and DMs on Twitter and all that stuff, and they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for saying this stuff. Because if I said this stuff, then my friends would completely disown me. And so that's a part of the process. So to answer the question, it was infinitely harder coming out as conservative than it was coming out as gay.
So you've had military experience.
Yes.
A lot of times it's hard to tell now currently where our military is standing politically.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a comment on where most people with military background would fall?
I do. And I talked to a lot of the buddies that I served with, and I've got a lot of stories about them in that book. Anybody who has, whether you served in the military, whether you served as a law enforcement officer, if you have served in some capacity where your life has been on the line in some capacity, you see the world differently than somebody who has not. And I do believe that a lot of people in the military look at the world through that different lens. It's a completely different lens. And that's not to separate those who have served from those who have not, but you just see the world in a different way. And knowing the different way that those people see the world, I know that they are more right-leaning. They always have been and they always will be. Police officers will always be more right-leaning. People in the military will always be more right-leaning. It just is what it is. It changes you as a person and you experience the world. Once you experience the world in which your physical life is in danger, and I'm not talking about somebody saying mean things on the internet, and I'm not talking about even maybe having to be escorted through a mob. I'm talking about walking through the streets of Iraq knowing that your face and your head could be in a sniper's crosshairs at any moment. So when you live through that, you see the world in a different way, and you tend to lean more towards law and order than anarchy. And I believe that's where our military stands.
Final question, how do we best support you and your work?
How do you best support me in my work? Interesting. So I would love you guys to follow me and share on Twitter. And as a matter of fact, I will be selling copies of my book right after this in the back of the Justice Room. For all you guys who are watching, I'll be in the Justice Room. I have copies of Always a Soldier, Service, Sacrifice, and Coming Out as America's Favorite Black Gay Republican that I will sign with this Donald Trump pin that came out of the Oval Office. And I'll be watching all of you like a hawk. I'll take my pen. So that's one way. Another way, I have a podcast out right now called Rob Smith is Problematic. Please listen, download, subscribe to the podcast. Please listen to this. Please tell your friends. There's a couple other things that I'm doing, and I've just partnered with Newt Gingrich, obviously the legendary Speaker of the House. And I've just partnered with his production company we're working on a project that I think will elevate the voices of Black conservatives in a way that never has been before. And when that project launches, you guys will all know it. And I encourage you when it does launch to support that and to go to the website and go to the social media in any way that it can. But if you guys follow me on all of my stuff, you will definitely see it when it launches. So that's how you guys can support me. And honestly, your support and encouragement and conversations throughout the course of this past amazing 3 days has supported me a lot, and I really deeply appreciate it. So I'll see you guys all in the back of the Justice Room and right after we wrap for a book signing, and I thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.